The floor was cold under my back, and I could feel my own heartbeat slowing down. I was Daniel Hargrove, and I had maybe 30 seconds left to live. Above me stood a Caliph soldier, tall and pale, with eyes the color of dried rust. He was not looking at me with anger. He was looking at me the way a person looks at spilled water on the floor, something to be cleaned up and forgotten. I had been a prisoner on this outpost for 11 days. Today, during a transfer between holding cells, a fight broke out. I do not even remember starting it. I remember a guard's hand around my throat, and then a blade across my side, and then the floor. The pain had already faded into something worse than pain, a kind of numbness that spreads from the center of your chest outward, like your body giving up before your mind does. I could hear my own breathing get thinner. I could hear Boots walking away, because the guard who cut me did not think I was worth watching die. That was when she came. I did not know her name yet. She wore the gray coat of a Caliph medical officer, and she knelt beside me so fast that her coat made almost no sound against the floor. Her eyes were the same rust color as the guards, but there was something different in them. Not pity exactly, more like disbelief, the look of someone watching a rule get broken in front of them. "You are not supposed to still be breathing," she said. Her voice was low, careful, like she was speaking to herself as much as to me. I could not answer her. My mouth would not work right anymore. She looked over her shoulder, down the long metal corridor, checking for anyone else. Then she pulled a small blade from her sleeve, the same kind the guard had used, except she turned it on her own wrist. "This is forbidden," she whispered, almost like an apology. But I did not build this ship to watch it become someone's grave. I felt something warm touch my lips. I did not have the strength to turn away, and honestly, I do not think I would have turned away even if I could. When you are seconds from the end, you stop caring about strange choices. You only care about the difference between stopping and continuing. I swallowed. It tasted like copper and something else, something electric, like biting down on a live wire and somehow surviving it. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. I remember thinking, with the last calm thought I would have for a while, that this was it, that the numbness would win after all. Then my chest exploded with heat. Not pain, heat. It moved through me the way fire moves through dry grass, fast and hungry, finding every part of me that had gone cold and lighting it again. My back arched off the floor. Somewhere far away, I heard the woman say something urgent, a warning maybe, or a question, but I could not make out the words anymore, because my own pulse was suddenly so loud it drowned out everything else. I saw colors behind my eyes that I do not have names for. I felt my wound, the one that should have killed me, pull itself closed, thread by thread, like invisible hands stitching me back together in fast motion. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. All I could do was grip the cold floor with both hands and let it happen. And then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. I lay there gasping, staring at a ceiling I did not recognize, in a body that felt both mine and completely foreign at the same time. My hands were shaking, not from weakness, but from something closer to excess. Like a glass filled far past its edge. The woman was still kneeling beside me, her wrist pressed against her own coat sleeve to stop the bleeding. She was staring at me now with an expression I would see many more times in the days to come, on many more faces. It was not hatred. It was fear, quiet and complete, the fear of someone who has just watched something they understood their whole life turn out to be wrong. "What did you do to me?" I managed to say. My voice sounded strange even to myself, steadier than it should have been for a man who had been dying 2 minutes earlier. "I gave you a gift," she said slowly, "one that is only ever given to our own kind. It is meant to bind you to us. It is meant to make you loyal, obedient, weaker than the one who gave it." She looked at her own hand like it belonged to a stranger. "You do not feel weaker," she said, "do you?" I sat up. My side, where the blade had gone in, was smooth and unmarked, like nothing had ever touched it. I pressed my fingers against my own ribs, and felt my heartbeat, strong and even, faster than a resting human heart should be, but not from fear. From something else, something waking up. "No," I said quietly. "I don't feel weaker at all." Somewhere down the corridor, an alarm began to chime, slow and rhythmic, the kind of sound a ship makes when it wants attention, but is not yet sure if it needs to panic. The woman's head snapped toward the sound. "They found the guard," she said. "The one who cut you. He will report that a human should be dead. If they check the surveillance and see what I did, we are both finished." I pulled myself to my feet. It should have been difficult. My body had been broken minutes ago. Instead, I stood in one smooth motion, and the strength in my legs surprised me so much that I almost laughed, though nothing about this moment was funny. "Then help me get out of here," I said, "and you're coming with me." She stared at me like I had suggested something impossible. "I am Caliph," she said. "You are asking me to run from my own people, because of a choice I made to save a stranger." "You already made that choice," I said. "The running part is just what happens next." For a moment neither of us moved. The alarm kept chiming, closer now, and beneath it I could hear something new, something I had never noticed with human ears before. Footsteps, several sets, coming from 2 different directions, still far off but closing in. I could count them. 6 from the left corridor, 4 from the right. I did not know how I knew that. I only knew that I did. The woman studied my face, and whatever she saw there made up her mind. "My name is Vesa," she said, standing quickly. "If we are doing this, we are doing it now." She led me down a side passage I would never have found on my own, one hand pressed to her wrist wound, the other waving me forward. I followed her, and with every step I became more aware of how wrong my body felt. Not wrong in the sense of pain, but wrong in the sense of too much. Too much strength in my legs. Too much sound reaching my ears. Too much awareness of my own racing heart, which did not feel like it was racing because it was afraid. It felt like it was racing because it finally had somewhere to go. Behind us, the alarm changed pitch. Sharper now, more urgent. Vesa's shoulders tensed at the sound. "That means they found something worse than a missing guard," she said, glancing back at me. "That means they found blood on the floor that should not still be there. Blood from a human who was supposed to be dead." I looked down at my own hands, steady despite everything, and felt a strange, cold certainty settle over me. Whatever I had become in the last few minutes, it was not finished yet. It was only beginning. And somewhere behind us, on a ship full of people who believed they understood every rule of life and death, that alarm was the sound of them realizing they did not understand anything at all. We kept running, and I did not look back. The corridor opened into a wider hallway, lined with pale light strips, and Vesa slowed just enough to glance at a small screen built into the wall. Her expression tightened. "They have sealed the lower decks," she said. "Which means they already suspect something happened here." "How many decks are there?" I asked. 12. We are on deck 9. The escape pods are on deck 3. 6 decks between us and any way off this ship. I should have felt panic at that number. Instead I felt something closer to focus, sharp and clean, like my mind had narrowed down to exactly what mattered, and nothing else. "Then we move," I said. We moved through service corridors, meant for maintenance crews, narrow spaces filled with humming machinery, and pipes that hissed faintly with pressurized gas. Vesa knew this ship the way I knew the back roads of my own hometown, without thinking, purely from memory. Twice we had to freeze against a wall, while patrol footsteps passed on the other side of a thin barrier, and both times I found myself holding my breath without needing to, my new heartbeat slow and controlled in a way that felt almost unnatural. On the 3rd stop, Vesa turned to look at me properly, for the first time since we started running. "You are not afraid," she said. It was not quite a question. "I should be," I admitted. "I don't know why I'm not." "Fear changes shape in a body like yours now," she said quietly. "It does not disappear. It becomes something else, something the body can use, instead of something that freezes it." I did not fully understand what she meant yet. I would understand it very well by the end of that day. We reached a stairwell that dropped straight down through the center of the ship, a shaft meant for emergency descent. Vesa hesitated at the top of it. "This is faster," she said, "but it is also the most exposed path on this deck. If anyone is waiting below, we will have nowhere to go." I looked down into the shaft. Far below, I could hear voices, faint but growing clearer, the kind of clarity that should not have been possible from that distance. I could make out words now. Someone was giving orders. Someone else was asking whether the human prisoner was truly gone, or truly transformed. "There's at least 4 people down there," I said. Vessa's eyes widened slightly. "You can hear that? From here?" I nodded slowly, unsettled by my own answer. "I can hear everything." She studied me for a long moment, and in that look I saw the beginning of something that would follow me for the rest of this story. Not admiration, not gratitude, even though I had every reason to think she deserved some. It was fear, quiet and growing. The same fear I had seen on her face the moment I first opened my eyes after drinking her blood. "Then we cannot go down that way," she said, "not with 4 of them waiting." "We don't need to avoid them," I said, surprising myself with how calm the words came out. "We need another way past them." Vessa looked at me like I had suggested something reckless, and maybe I had. But some new part of me, the part that had woken up along with my racing heart and my too sharp hearing, was already certain of one thing. Whatever this ship's soldiers thought they knew about handling a human, about handling me, they were about to learn they knew nothing at all. The chase through the ship had only just begun, and already I could feel the shape of what I was becoming, something neither fully human, nor fully what Vessa's people intended when they made their gift, something in between, something new, and something that 6 decks of frightened soldiers were about to meet for the very first time. We found another way past the 4 soldiers waiting below, though it was not the way I expected. Vessa led me to a narrow vent shaft used for cooling the ship's lower reactors, a space so tight that she had to turn sideways to fit through it. I followed without hesitation, and for the first time I noticed something else about my new body. The tight metal walls did not bother me. My breathing stayed even. Where a normal person might have felt the walls pressing in, threatening to trap them, I felt only the steady rhythm of my own pulse guiding me forward, patient and sure. We came out in a storage bay, filled with crates stacked higher than my head, each one marked with symbols I could not read. Vessa pressed a finger to her lips and pointed toward a door on the far side of the room. "That leads to a maintenance lift," she whispered. "It goes straight to deck 4. From there, the escape pods are close." We were halfway across the storage bay when the door on the far side slid open on its own, and a soldier stepped through, his weapon already raised. He was not one of the 4 voices I had heard from the stairwell. This one had clearly been posted here on purpose, waiting. For a moment, none of us moved. Then the soldier's eyes locked onto me, and something changed in his expression. Not confusion, recognition. He had seen my description already, passed along through whatever alarm system this ship used to spread urgent news. "You," he said, and his voice cracked slightly on the single word. "You are supposed to be dead." "I was," I said. "It didn't take." He raised his weapon higher, and I understood in that moment that talking was not going to end this. I looked at Vessa, and she gave the smallest shake of her head, a silent warning that told me everything. If this soldier fired and missed even by a small amount, the sound alone would bring every patrol on this deck straight to us. I moved before I decided to move. That is the strangest way I can describe it. My body reacted a full breath before my mind caught up, crossing the distance between us faster than I had any right to cross it, faster than any human legs should carry a person. The soldier's weapon fired once, a bright streak of light that should have hit me square in the chest. It did not. I do not fully understand, even now, how I avoided it. Some new instinct read the tension in his arm before he pulled the trigger. Some part of me that had learned in an instant what it took soldiers years to train their bodies to sense. I felt the heat of the shot pass close beside my shoulder, and then I was already past his weapon, my hand closing around his wrist and turning it upward and away. He was strong. Calith soldiers are not weak by any measure. But the strength in my grip was not measured against a human anymore, and I felt his wrist give way under a pressure his own body could not match. The weapon clattered to the floor. He tried to pull free, tried to strike at me with his other hand, and I caught that one too, holding him steady, the way you might hold a struggling animal that does not yet understand it has already lost. "Please," he said, and his voice had lost all its earlier confidence. "I do not understand what you are." "Neither do I answered honestly. "But I'm not going to hurt you if I don't have to." I meant it. Whatever had changed inside me, whatever fire Vessa's blood had lit, I still recognized the fear in this man's eyes, and some part of me, The part that was still simply Daniel Hargrove from a small town on a small planet, did not want to be the reason for that fear, if there was any other choice. I pressed a hand against a nerve point along his neck, something I somehow knew without ever being taught, and he slumped forward, unconscious but breathing steadily. I lowered him gently to the floor. Vesa stared at me, her mouth slightly open. "You knew exactly where to press," she said. "That is not something a normal human body would know. That is not something even a young Caliph would know without years of training." "I don't know how I knew it," I said, and that was the truth. It just felt obvious. Like remembering something I never actually learned. "The blood," Vesa murmured, almost to herself. "It is supposed to give strength and healing. It is not supposed to give knowledge like this. Not this fast. Not to anyone." We did not have time to discuss it further. The unconscious soldier would be found eventually, and when he was, the search for us would sharpen into something far more dangerous. We crossed the rest of the storage bay and reached the maintenance lift Vesa had promised, and for a few precious minutes, as the lift carried us down toward Deck 4, neither of us spoke. I used the silence to look at my own hands again, turning them over slowly, studying the way the fine lines of my palms seemed sharper somehow, more defined, as if my whole body had been redrawn with a steadier hand. I thought about the wound in my side that no longer existed. I thought about the soldier's wrist bending under my grip like it belonged to someone half his size. I thought about hearing 4 voices from 6 decks away. "What happens now?" I asked Vesa, breaking the silence. "If we make it off this ship? What happens to me?" Her rust-colored eyes met mine in the dim light of the lift. "I do not know," she admitted. "No one has ever asked that question before, because no one ever imagined a human would live long enough to need an answer." The lift doors opened onto Deck 4, and any hope of a quiet exit ended immediately. 3 more soldiers stood near the entrance to the escape pod bay, and one of them was already speaking into a communicator, his voice tight with urgency. "Confirmed sighting. Deck 4. Requesting immediate reinforcement. The human subject is—" He never finished the sentence. Vesa moved first this time, faster than I expected from her, closing the distance and striking the communicator from his hand before he could say another word. The other 2 soldiers reacted instantly, weapons rising, and I felt that same strange readiness settle over me again, my body moving with a certainty my mind was only beginning to trust. I do not remember every detail of what happened next with perfect clarity, because it happened too quickly for ordinary memory to hold on to every piece. I remember ducking under a shot that would have taken my head off if I still had a human's reflexes. I remember the solid impact of my shoulder against a soldier's chest, driving him back into a wall hard enough to knock the air from his lungs but not hard enough, I made sure, to do lasting harm. I remember catching a second weapon out of the air after knocking it loose, and setting it down deliberately on the floor instead of using it, because some part of me had already decided that I did not want to become a person who solved every problem with a stolen weapon. When it was over, 3 Caliph soldiers lay unconscious or groaning on the floor of Deck 4, and Vesa stood beside me, breathing hard, staring at the scene with an expression that mixed disbelief with something close to awe. "You held back," she said quietly. "Every one of them is alive." "I didn't need to kill anyone," I said, and even as I said it, I understood how strange it sounded, that a man who had been given this much sudden power would choose restraint. "I just needed to get past them." "Do you understand what you just did?" she asked. 3 trained soldiers, and you moved through them like they were standing still." I looked down at my hands again, steadier now than they had any right to be after what had just happened. "I understand that I should be more afraid of myself than I am," I said honestly. We reached the escape pod bay without further trouble, though the alarm behind us had grown into a constant, urgent wail that echoed through the whole ship now. Vesa moved quickly to one of the small pods, running her hands across its controls with practiced familiarity. "This will take us to the nearest inhabited world," she said. "It is not Caliph territory. It is a neutral trading post, but it will be safe enough to disappear into for a while." "And after that?" She paused, her hand resting on the pod's entry hatch. "After that, I do not know what becomes of either of us," she admitted. "You are the first of your kind. I gave you a gift, meant to create loyalty and control, and instead, I created something my own people will call an abomination, something they will hunt, because they do not understand it. and because they fear what it means if it spreads. "And what do you think it means?" I asked. She looked at me for a long moment, studying my face, the way a person studies something they are trying to memorize before it disappears. "I think it means the old rules do not apply to you anymore," she said. "I think it means every assumption my people have about your species being weaker, being beneath us, was wrong from the very beginning, and now there is proof standing in front of me that cannot be argued away." We climbed into the escape pod together, and as the hatch sealed shut and the ship's alarm faded into a distant hum outside the hull, I felt the first small pull of the pod's engines, carrying us away from everything I had known as a prisoner, and toward something entirely uncertain. I did not know yet how far this change in me would go, how much stronger, how much sharper, how much more capable I would become in the days ahead. I only knew that somewhere behind us, on a ship full of soldiers who believed they understood the difference between predator and prey, that understanding had just been shattered completely, and word of what happened on Deck 4 and Deck 9 would spread far beyond that single ship before long. The pod's small viewport showed the outpost shrinking behind us, its lights scattering into pinpoints against the dark, and I found myself thinking not about fear, and not even about relief, but about the strange, quiet certainty settling into my chest. Whatever I had become, it was only the beginning, and somewhere out there, more of Vessa's people were about to learn exactly how wrong they had been about what a human being seconds from death could turn into when given the smallest chance to keep fighting. The trading post was called Corvell Station, a wide ring of metal and glass built around a dying yellow star, home to a mix of species who cared more about profit than politics. Vessa said it was neutral ground, which meant no single power controlled it, which meant it was the safest place we could reach without being pulled back into Calith territory. For the first 2 days, nothing happened. We kept to the lower levels, where the crowds were thick enough to hide in, and the lighting was dim enough that no one looked twice at a human walking beside a Calith woman in plain clothes. I used that time to learn my own body again, because everything about it felt borrowed from someone stronger, someone faster, someone who saw the world with sharper edges than I ever had before. I could hear conversations through walls if I focused. I could catch the scent of fear on a person before they said a single word, a strange chemical sharpness that clung to nervous people the way smoke clings to fabric. My reflexes had settled into something steady and reliable, rather than the wild burst of instinct I felt during the escape, which told me my body was still adjusting, still learning what it now was, the same way I was learning it myself. On the third day, everything changed. We were in a narrow market corridor, buying supplies with currency Vessa had managed to trade for, when I felt it before I heard it. A shift in the air, subtle but unmistakable, the kind of tension that spreads through a crowd right before something violent begins. I grabbed Vessa's arm and pulled her back against a wall just as 3 figures pushed through the crowd ahead of us, moving with the same controlled discipline as trained soldiers. Calith soldiers, but not from the outpost we had escaped. Different uniforms, sharper insignias, the kind of presence that made even the confident traders around us fall silent and step aside. "Bounty hunters," Vessa whispered. "Word already reached beyond the outpost. Someone is offering payment for information about us." "How would they even know to look here?" I asked. "Corvell Station is the nearest inhabited system to where we escaped," she said. "It was the obvious place to search first. I should have thought of that before we came here." There was no time for regret. The lead soldier's eyes swept across the crowd and stopped on me, lingering a moment too long, the way a person's eyes linger when they recognize a face from a description rather than memory. "That's him," he said to the others, loud enough that several nearby traders flinched and backed away. "The human from the outpost report." I felt Vessa tense beside me, and I understood immediately that running through a crowded market corridor would only put innocent bystanders in danger, would only turn a manageable situation into chaos. So instead, I stepped forward, away from Vessa, putting myself directly in the soldier's path. "You're looking for me," I said, keeping my voice level. "So here I am." The lead soldier studied me with open suspicion, clearly expecting a trick. "You should not be alive," he said, "and you should not be standing here calmly, offering yourself to 3 armed soldiers." "I'm not offering myself," I said. "I'm giving you a chance to walk away before this becomes something none of us want." He laughed, short and humorless, and gestured for his companions to spread out, flanking me on either side. The crowd around us scattered further, traders and travelers pulling back to watch from a careful distance, sensing exactly what was about to happen, even before it started. 3 against 1, the lead soldier said. Whatever strange gift you were given, it will not be enough. You're wrong about the numbers, I said quietly. It was never really 3 against 1. It was always going to be your training, against something none of you have ever trained to fight. He did not understand what I meant. Not yet. He would understand very soon. The first soldier moved fast, faster than the ones on the outpost, clearly more experienced, more disciplined in his strikes. I read the motion of his shoulders a fraction of a second before his weapon left its holster, and I closed the distance between us before he could raise it fully. My hand caught his wrist, twisting with just enough force to make him release his grip without breaking anything, and I used his own momentum to push him sideways into a stack of crates, where he crumpled without serious harm. The second soldier came at me directly, choosing to fight with his hands rather than risk a shot in the crowded corridor. He was strong, trained in some kind of formal combat discipline that showed in every controlled movement, every calculated strike. Under different circumstances, before Vessa's blood changed everything inside me, he would have ended this fight in seconds. Instead, I found myself reading his attacks the way I might read a simple pattern, anticipating each strike before it fully formed, moving just enough to avoid the worst of it while conserving my own strength. When the opening came, I did not hesitate. I caught his arm mid-strike, turned my body into the motion, and used his own weight against him, sending him down hard enough to knock the breath from his lungs but not hard enough to cause lasting damage. The third soldier hesitated, watching his companions fall in a matter of seconds, and in that hesitation, I saw something I recognized clearly now, because I had seen it forming on faces since the moment I woke up on that outpost floor. Fear. "What are you?" he said, backing away slowly, his weapon lowering despite himself. "I used to be exactly what you think a human is," I said. "Weak. Easy to underestimate. I'm still figuring out what I am now, but I can tell you this much. Whatever it isn't something your training prepared you for." He turned and ran, disappearing into the scattering crowd, and I let him go without pursuit. The other 2 soldiers groaned on the ground nearby, alive, breathing, humiliated but not broken beyond recovery. Vessa approached slowly, her expression a careful mix of relief and something deeper, something closer to the beginning of true fear, directed not at the soldiers, but at me. "You are getting stronger," she said quietly, once we were moving again through a quieter passage, away from the market. "Faster than I predicted. Faster than should be possible." "Is that a bad thing?" I asked. "I do not know yet," she admitted. "That is what frightens me." We found temporary shelter in a rented room on one of the station's lower rings, small and cramped but private enough to talk freely. Vessa sat across from me, studying my face with the kind of focused attention a scientist gives to an experiment that has gone somewhere entirely unexpected. "Tell me what you feel," she said. "Not what you think you should feel. What you actually feel. In your body. Right now." I considered the question seriously, because it deserved a serious answer. "Steady," I said. "Stronger than before. Even than yesterday. My senses are sharper than they were this morning. It's like my body is still climbing toward something, and I don't know where the top is." "Calith blood given to another Calith stabilizes within hours," she said. "The recipient becomes what they will remain for the rest of their life, loyal, bound, unchanging. You are 3 days past that point, and you are still changing, still growing stronger." "What does that mean?" "I believe," she said slowly, choosing her words with visible care, "that the gift behaves differently in a human body, because your bodies were never designed by us, never shaped by our history, never limited by our expectations of what the gift should do. In us, it creates a servant. In you, it may simply be doing what your own body already knows how to do, adapting, improving, without the restraints we built into ourselves generations ago." I sat with that thought for a long moment, feeling the truth of it settle somewhere deep in my chest. "So there's no ceiling," I said. "No natural stopping point." "I do not know," Vessa admitted again. "No one has ever needed to find one before." That night, unable to sleep despite a body that felt like it barely needed rest anymore, I stepped outside, onto a narrow observation platform, overlooking the dying star at the center of Corvell Station's orbit. The light it cast was pale orange, tired, the last stubborn glow of something that had burned brightly once and was slowly fading now, though it would take longer than any living creature's lifetime to fully go dark. I thought about the man I had been 11 days ago, before capture, before the blade, before Vessa's desperate choice on a cold metal floor. That man had been afraid of nearly everything. Ordinary fears, the kind every person carries without thinking much about them. Afraid of failure, afraid of pain, afraid of not measuring up to whatever standard the universe seemed to expect. The man standing on this platform now was afraid of almost nothing physical, and that absence of fear felt stranger than any of the new strength in my limbs. What replaced it was something closer to responsibility, a growing awareness that whatever I had become carried weight, carried consequences, carried the kind of power that could easily become something dangerous if I let it. Vessa joined me on the platform sometime later, standing quietly beside me without speaking for a while. "They will keep coming," she finally said. "Word of what happened in that market corridor will spread even faster than the outpost report. My people do not tolerate what they cannot control. And they especially do not tolerate discovering that something they believed was weak has quietly become something they cannot control at all." "Then we don't hide," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my own voice. "Hiding just gives them time to prepare a bigger response. What do you suggest instead?" I looked out at the dim orange light of the dying star, thinking of the soldier who had run from me in the market, thinking of the fear I had already caused simply by surviving. "I think it's time people understood what actually happened," I said. "Not rumors, not a bounty report full of exaggerations, the truth. That a human was seconds from death, and instead of dying quietly the way everyone expected, he became something your people never accounted for." Vessa turned to look at me fully, and in her rust-colored eyes, I saw something shift. Something that had been building since the moment on the outpost floor when she first realized her forbidden gift had not created the obedient servant she was trained to expect. "You want them to know," she said slowly, "exactly what fear they should have felt from the beginning." "I want them to understand," I said, "that underestimating a dying man was the last mistake they should have made." Below us, Corvell Station hummed with the quiet business of 1,000 strangers going about their lives, unaware that somewhere among them stood a human being who had crossed a line no one, not even the species who created the gift that changed him, fully understood yet. Word was already spreading through the station's lower rings, through hushed conversations in market corridors, and quiet exchanges between traders who had witnessed 3 trained soldiers fall in under a minute. Somewhere far beyond this station, in halls and command centers belonging to a species that had ruled with quiet confidence for longer than human history could measure, that word would arrive soon enough. And when it did, the fear that had started with a handful of frightened soldiers on a market corridor floor would spread further than either Vessa or I could yet imagine, reaching all the way to the people who believed they had nothing left to fear, from a species they had always considered beneath them. The message came 4 days later, delivered through a courier drone that landed quietly on the observation platform where Vessa and I had spent so many nights talking through what I had become. It carried no threat, no demand, only a simple recorded voice, speaking in careful, formal tones. "To the human known as Daniel Hargrove, you are requested to appear before the Calith Council of Outer Reaches, to answer for actions taken against Calith soldiers, and to explain the nature of your condition. Failure to appear will be treated as confirmation of hostile intent." Vessa listened to the message twice before speaking. "They are not sending soldiers to hunt you anymore," she said. "They are sending a formal summons. That is new. That has never happened for a human before." "What does it mean?" "It means you frightened them enough that they no longer believe simple force will settle this," she said. "It means they want to understand what you are, before they decide how to respond to it. That is either the safest option available to us, or the most dangerous one, and I honestly do not know which." I considered the message carefully, turning it over in my mind the way I had learned to turn over every decision since waking up on that outpost floor. Somewhere in the folds of that formal invitation was a trap, or an opportunity, or possibly both at once. "If I don't go," I said slowly, "they'll keep sending soldiers. Keep sending bounty hunters. This never ends. And if you do go, Vesa said, you walk directly into the heart of the people who created the gift that changed you, without knowing what they truly intend. You said it yourself. What happened to me was forbidden. Giving your blood to a human. Doesn't that put you in danger the moment I show up and explain how I became this? Vesa's expression did not change, but something in her posture straightened, the quiet resolve of someone who had already considered this question long before I asked it aloud. Yes, she said simply. It does. Then you don't come with me, I said. I'll go alone. I won't let you answer for a choice you made to save my life. You misunderstand me, she said, and for the first time since I had known her, there was something firm in her voice, almost commanding. I did not save your life so that you could walk into danger without me beside you. I broke the oldest law my people hold sacred, because I looked at a dying stranger and decided his life mattered more than that law. I am not going to abandon that decision now, simply because it has become inconvenient to stand by it. I studied her for a long moment, seeing clearly for the first time how much courage her original choice had actually required. Not the desperate courage of a single frightened moment, but a deeper, steadier kind that had carried her through every day since. Then we go together, I said. But if they try to punish you for what you did, I won't stand quietly and let that happen either. That may not be a choice either of us gets to make, she said quietly. The council does not often show mercy to those who break sacred law, no matter their reasons. We traveled toward the council's outer reaches station over the following 3 days, and during that time, I felt the changes in my body continue to deepen, subtle but unmistakable. My reflexes sharpened further. My understanding of my own strength grew more precise, more controlled, until I could judge exactly how much force a given action required, without any wasted effort. Vesa watched this progression, with a mixture of professional curiosity and quiet unease, taking careful notes she said she intended to use later, though for what purpose she did not yet say. The council station itself was unlike anything I had seen before, a massive structure built in concentric rings around a central chamber, home to representatives from across Calith territory who gathered to settle disputes too significant for local authorities to handle alone. We were met at the entrance by an escort of 6 soldiers, armed but disciplined, clearly under strict orders not to provoke a confrontation before the council had a chance to speak. The chamber itself was vast, circular, lined with tiered seating that rose high above a central floor where I now stood, Vesa beside me, facing a panel of elders whose expressions ranged from open curiosity to barely restrained hostility. At the center of that panel sat an older Caliph with silver-streaked hair and eyes so pale they seemed almost colorless, introduced simply as Elder Draven Korth, the presiding voice of this particular council session. Daniel Hargrove, he said, his voice carrying easily through the chamber without any need for amplification. You stand accused of assaulting Calith soldiers on 2 separate occasions, and of receiving a gift forbidden to your species by ancient law. Do you dispute these facts? No, I said honestly. I don't dispute any of it. I defended myself against soldiers who attacked me first, and I received Vesa's blood because I was dying, and she chose to save me, rather than let me die on a cold floor for no reason, other than what species I happened to be born into. A murmur ran through the tiered seats above, some of it hostile, some of it, I noticed with mild surprise, curious rather than angry. You admit freely to what should be impossible, Elder Korth said. Our gift does not simply heal, it binds. It creates loyalty, obedience, a permanent connection between giver and receiver that ensures the recipient never becomes a threat to our people. Yet here you stand, having defeated trained soldiers with what witnesses describe as effortless control. Explain this contradiction. I glanced at Vesa briefly before answering, drawing steadiness from her presence beside me. I think the gift did exactly what it was designed to do, I said. It gave me strength, healing, sharper senses, faster reflexes. What it didn't do was change who I am underneath all of that. I'm still human. My body still works the way a human body works, adapting to whatever it's given, rather than simply obeying a set of rules built into it from birth. You built loyalty into your own people, because your bodies were shaped to accept that structure. Mine wasn't, So the gift became something else in me. Not weaker, not stronger, exactly. Just different. Silence spread through the chamber, heavy and considering. Elder Korth studied me for a long moment before speaking again. "And what do you intend to do with this difference?" he asked. "Now that you possess strength that could threaten entire outposts, entire fleets in time, what stops you from becoming the very danger our ancient law was designed to prevent?" This was the question I had been waiting for, the one Vesa and I had discussed carefully during the long journey to this station, though neither of us had settled on a perfect answer. "Nothing stops me," I said honestly, "except the same thing that's always stopped people from becoming a danger to others. Choice. I could have killed every soldier who came after me on that outpost, in that market corridor. I chose not to, because becoming a weapon isn't the same as having power. I intend to keep making that same choice, for as long as I'm given the chance to make it." Elder Korth's pale eyes narrowed slightly, and for a moment I thought I saw something shift behind them, not quite trust, but perhaps the beginning of reconsideration. "And the officer who gave you this gift, in direct violation of sacred law," he said, turning his attention to Vesa. "What do you say in your own defense?" Vesa stepped forward before I could speak on her behalf, her posture steady, despite the weight of every eye in the chamber resting on her. "I say that I looked at a dying man and chose compassion over law," she said clearly. "I say that if given the same choice again, under the same circumstances, I would make the exact same decision, regardless of the consequences I now face. Our law was written to protect us from what we feared might happen if humans gained power equal to our own. I have stood beside this man for many days now, and I can tell you honestly, the danger was never in the power itself. It was always going to be in how that power was used, and this man has proven, again and again, that he understands the difference far better than the soldiers who were sent to stop him." The chamber fell into a longer silence this time, elders exchanging glances along the tiered seating, some clearly troubled, others thoughtful, in a way that suggested Vesa's words had struck somewhere deeper than simple politics. Elder Korth leaned forward slightly, studying both of us with renewed intensity. "This council will need time to deliberate," he finally said. "What you have described today, if true, represents a fundamental challenge to assumptions our people have held for generations. That is not a small matter to resolve in a single session." "How much time?" I asked. "Enough to ensure whatever decision we reach is not made in haste," he said. "You will remain here, under guard but unharmed, until we reach that decision." I felt Vesa tense slightly beside me, and I understood the unspoken fear behind Elder Korth's careful words. Under guard, but not yet condemned. A pause rather than a verdict. Whatever came next would determine not just our fate, but perhaps the fate of how an entire species chose to see humanity from this point forward, and I found myself hoping, more than I had hoped for anything since waking up on that outpost floor, that the choice I had made to show restraint again and again had been the right one. They kept us in a holding suite near the upper rings of the station, comfortable by prisoner standards, but a prison all the same. 2 guards stood outside the door at all times, and though they never spoke to us directly, I could hear the tension in their breathing whenever they changed shifts. The same quiet fear I had grown used to seeing on faces since the day I woke up changed. 3 days passed before anything happened, and during those 3 days, Vesa and I talked more openly than we had at any point since the outpost, filling the silence with questions neither of us had dared ask, while running for our lives. She told me about her life before the gift, before the choice that broke sacred law, about a family that had served the council for generations, about a quiet, ordinary path she had once expected to walk, without ever stepping outside its lines. "I never imagined breaking that law," she admitted one evening, sitting across from me in the dim light of the holding suite. "Not once, in my entire life, did I imagine a moment where I would choose a stranger's life over everything I was raised to believe in." "Do you regret it?" I asked. She considered the question with the same careful honesty she brought to everything. "No," she said finally. "I regret the danger it placed us both in. I do not regret the choice itself." On the 4th day, the door to our suite opened without warning, and instead of the usual guards, Elder Korth himself stood in the entrance, flanked by soldiers whose posture suggested something far more serious than a routine check. "The council has reached a decision," he said, "but before it is delivered, there is something you both need to know. A faction within our own ranks has grown impatient with deliberation. They believe words and votes are too slow a response to what you represent. They have taken matters into their own hands. What does that mean? I asked, already feeling that familiar readiness settle over my body. It means Commander Malric Vane has assembled an enforcement squad outside official council authority, Elder Korth said grimly. He intends to end what he calls the human problem before the council can rule in your favor, which he believes, correctly, is the direction our deliberations were heading. Then we need to move, Vesa said immediately, rising from her seat. There is nowhere left to move, Elder Korth said. Vane's squad has already breached the lower rings. He is coming here directly, and he does not intend to wait for permission from anyone. I felt the weight of the moment settle over me, clear and simple despite its danger. This was not going to end with careful words in a council chamber. It was going to end here, in this station, in whatever confrontation Commander Vane had decided was necessary to erase a threat he refused to understand. How many soldiers does he have? I asked. 12, Elder Korth said. All experienced, all loyal to him personally, rather than to council law. 12 trained soldiers, led by a commander, determined enough to defy his own government's authority. Under ordinary circumstances, that number would have been a death sentence for anyone standing against it. But I had stopped measuring myself against ordinary circumstances days ago. Get everyone else clear, I said to Elder Korth. If this happens, it happens away from anyone who doesn't need to be caught in it. You intend to fight him, Elder Korth said, not quite a question. I intend to end this, I said, one way or another, before he decides to hurt people who never had a say in any of this. Vesa moved to stand beside me, and I saw in her eyes that same steady resolve that had carried her through breaking sacred law on a cold outpost floor. I am not leaving your side, she said simply, and I did not argue, because I understood by now that arguing would accomplish nothing against that particular resolve. Elder Korth studied both of us for a long moment, and something in his pale eyes shifted, the last remnants of doubt giving way to something closer to respect. The council chamber has an open floor, he said, space enough for whatever is about to happen, and walls thick enough to keep it contained if it must happen at all. I will clear the station's civilian levels. Whatever comes next, it will not touch innocent lives if I can help it. He left quickly, soldiers following, and within minutes, the station's alarm system began broadcasting evacuation instructions to every civilian level, calm and orderly, despite the danger, racing toward the council chamber floor. Commander Vane arrived not long after, 12 soldiers spread in careful formation behind him, as he strode onto the open chamber floor, where Vesa and I stood waiting. He was tall, even by Caliph standards, his expression carved from the same cold certainty I had seen on the very first soldier who stood over me while I was dying. I expected the council to hesitate, he said, his voice carrying easily across the empty chamber. I did not expect them to actually consider legitimizing what you represent. What do you think I represent? I asked. The end of everything my people built, he said. A species we have always understood to be beneath us, suddenly capable of matching our strength, our speed, our resilience, without any of the restraints we built into ourselves generations ago. If this spreads, if others learn what was done to you, we lose everything that has kept us safe and dominant for longer than your species has existed. Or maybe, I said, your people finally have to learn what it feels like to share power with someone instead of ruling over them. His jaw tightened, and I saw his hand move toward the weapon at his side. I will not allow that lesson to be learned, he said. Not while I still draw breath. The fight that followed was unlike anything I had experienced since waking up changed. 12 trained soldiers moved with real coordination, real discipline, clearly drilled together for exactly this kind of confrontation. Under different circumstances, I do not believe I could have survived it, no matter how much strength Vesa's blood had given me. But I was not fighting the way they expected me to fight. I had spent days learning that this new body of mine did not need to rely purely on strength or speed. It could read patterns, anticipate coordinated movements, exploit the small gaps that formal training sometimes leaves behind, gaps that only appear when someone thinks entirely outside the structure they were taught. I moved through their formation the way water moves through cracks in stone, finding every opening their discipline could not account for, disabling soldiers one after another with careful, controlled strikes that left them unconscious rather than harmed beyond recovery. Vesa fought beside me, her own training as a Caliph giving her an understanding of their tactics that let her anticipate moves I might otherwise have missed. The two of us working together in a rhythm that felt, strangely, like something we had practiced for years rather than days. Commander Vane watched his soldiers fall, one by one, his expression shifting from certainty to something rawer, something closer to the same fear I had seen on every face since the outpost. When only he remained standing, he looked at me across the empty chamber floor, breathing hard, his weapon still raised but his hand visibly unsteady. "This is not possible," he said quietly. "You should have been overwhelmed. You should have failed." "I think that's exactly the problem," I said, stepping closer, my own breathing steady despite everything that had just happened. "You built your whole understanding of the universe around the idea that some species are simply destined to overwhelm others. You never planned for what happens when that assumption turns out to be wrong." He lowered his weapon slowly, not out of surrender, but out of something that looked closer to genuine confusion, a man watching the foundation of everything he believed crumble in real time. "What are you?" he asked, echoing the same question every soldier before him had asked, though this time it carried a different weight, less accusation, and more genuine, frightened curiosity. "I used to just be a man who was seconds from death," I said. "Now I think I'm something your people are going to have to learn to understand, rather than something you can simply erase because it frightens you." Elder Korth arrived moments later with a full council escort, taking in the scene, 12 soldiers scattered but alive, Commander Vane standing defeated but unharmed in the center of it all. Whatever final judgment the council reached that day, I understood clearly that it no longer mattered whether they chose to formally accept what I had become. The truth had already been proven, on this chamber floor, in front of enough witnesses that no amount of careful deliberation could undo it. The council did rule in our favor eventually, granting Vesa a form of protected status rather than punishment, acknowledging, however reluctantly, that her forbidden choice had revealed something about their own gift that generations of careful control had kept hidden even from themselves. As for me, no formal ruling could ever fully capture what I had become, because I was the first of something entirely new, neither fully human in the way I once was, nor anything close to what the Caliph had ever intended their gift to create. I think back often to that cold floor where this all began, to Vesa's steady hands and her forbidden choice, to the last numb seconds where I expected nothing more than an ending. I did not find an ending there. I found a beginning, one that frightened an entire species, accustomed to believing they understood every rule of strength and weakness in the universe. They were not wrong to be frightened. I simply do not think they understood, until it was far too late, exactly what they should have been afraid of all along. It was never really about the blood, or the strength it gave, or the speed, or the healing. It was about what happens when you hand power to someone who was never taught to expect it, and who chooses, again and again, to use it with restraint rather than cruelty. That choice, more than anything Vesa's blood ever gave me, is what truly frightened them in the end.